This weekend could be make or break for the federal NDP. The party will elect its new leader among these 5 candidates who are all promising to rebuild the party after its worst ever election result. The 2 apparent frontrunners are filmmaker and activist Avi Lewis and NDP MP Heather McPherson.
I think there's an immense amount of political space for the NDP in this moment. There's no party which is speaking up clearly and consistently against war. There's no party that is speaking up clearly and consistently about getting off the most destabilizing force in the global economy right now, which is oil.
We want to make this country better for all Canadians. And the goal has to be to win, though. The goal has to be to elect more seats. I think that is something that I bring as a member of Parliament, as somebody who has won 3 elections and is currently sitting in the House of Commons. I think that is something I bring.
Time now for our party insiders. Greg McPherson is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. Melanie Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. Hi guys, nice to see you all on this Friday. Mel, I'm starting with you today. What's the word from Winnipeg? What do you expect to go down this weekend?
Yeah, so busy weekend. Obviously, you can hear behind me they're doing resolutions right now, so figuring out what party policy is going to be moving forward. Tomorrow there's the leadership showcase, so we're going to hear from the leaders one last time so that folks can get their votes in, and then we'll see on Sunday who ends up being leader. I was saying to folks off the side at the beginning that I was really excited for the tribute to Jagmeet, and that was today, so that was really nice, and it was nice to see the room give him one last big hug before the reins are officially passed to the new leader on Sunday.
Fred, you wrote a piece in your Substack this morning. You had this title: Avi Lewis is a first ballot lock. The provincial NDP should be terrified. Tell me about that.
Okay, love to. Well, look, the math is pretty clear here. There's 5 people running. I would say the 2 bottom, and their names I keep forgetting. I've already forgotten.
Tennille Johnson, Tony McQuail.
Thank you.
Rob Ashton.
Rob Ashton, I remember. But those 2, for this to go more than 1 ballot, those 4 people plus Heather McPherson need over 50% plus 1 to get it to another ballot.
Right.
I don't see any path for that from what I've been seeing. And what really showed and tipped me off to this is the donor numbers. The individual donors, over 60% of people who donated to the NDP or to a leadership campaign donated to Avi Lewis.
Yeah.
So that, just looking at the numbers and having gone through a lot of leadership campaigns.
It's not just the money, it's the number of donors.
It's the individual donors, right? It's in the money. He's also raised more money than the rest combined. So all of that together just shows to me that I would be absolutely stunned if he does not get a first ballot win on this. And to the other point in my piece that I wrote was what this means for the NDP. Because he is the most far left leader this party will have ever had at a time when what we're seeing is people want someone more in the middle, I think. So I think this is going to be a risk for the NDP, and the way the NDP is structured, they're not like the Liberals and the Conservatives, who provincial and federal parties are not tied. They're tied together. They're one party, and it's going to have an impact on the provincial ones.
Greg?
Well, there's an opportunity here to rebuild for the NDP. I want to start off by saying, some positive things. When the Liberal Party was in dire straits in 2013, I think it was, there he had a convention here, and it was a real rebuild. I think the Liberal Party was very lucky to have Bob Rae as the interim leader. Yeah. But a very interesting thing happened at that convention when the motion to legalize cannabis was passed. And I remember, I believe it was Chantal Hébert, Susan Delacourt were covering it, and they were talking about how it was no longer, it wasn't just, although it might have been put forward by the youth wing of the party, everyone was voting for it. And at the time, there was talk from then Prime Minister Harper about increasing the criminal penalties around this, and people, I think, were being practical and thinking about what they had done in university and how this was going to affect their kids. And then we fast forward, the Conservatives were against this. They voted against it. But, last week, Pierre Poilievre was trying to push the issue away. I think that was a time where the Liberals decided, okay, we've had a huge loss. This is a good time for us to kind of take stock and do brave things. But my NDP friends, are worried if Avi Lewis wins. He's a Nepo grandbaby. He's ran and never won. And the thing that actually really bothers me is someone who's part of a party that doesn't have a really strong provincial wing. And when we go west, The NDP are government and official opposition in a lot of provinces in Nova Scotia. And the absolute disdain that he talked about Rachel Notley and what they did in Alberta, I just thought was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard a politician do, which means it's more about Avi Lewis than it is about the NDP.
Yeah, and he was critical of David Eby and the BC NDP government too, especially on LNG. Mel, what do you make of that point that he could be potentially toxic for the provincial wings of the party and in places where they've done well, like on the prairies?
Yeah, it's going to be a massive challenge for him if he is the person who wins on Sunday. Our Constitution works a little bit differently than it does for the Conservatives and the Liberals. We're all sincerely one big party that's tied into the membership provincially, so not working well with the provincial parties, and particularly the premiers or premiers in waiting in a lot of those provinces is going to be harmful. So he's going to need to change his approach, absolutely, and bring people in. Because the person who wins on Sunday is not just the leader for the people who voted for them, they become the leader for all New Democrats, be it people who are completely aligned with their vision of the party or people who aren't but are New Democrats. So that'll be really important. And if it is Avi on Sunday, he's going to have a lot of work to do, and not just with Premier Eby, with Premier Canoe, and with the NDP leaders in all provinces who aren't totally sure what that looks like if he's leader. But it will be important to keep the party together, because that's important not just for the way that our party works, be it organizing, be it memberships, be it even the ability to fundraise, but really just the way that we are as an NDP family. We all have the same values, or 99% of the same values. So the importance of bringing people in, because that's going to be the leader's job on day one. Is okay, you disagreed with the different campaigns during the leadership campaign, but now you got to bring everybody together so that we can then go to Canadians and tell them we're united, and this is what we're putting forward in the next election.
Rob Ashton, Mel, called Mr. Lewis a divisive figure. He said he was a divisive leader. He said he was taking on the provinces. Do you think that Mr. Lewis has it in him to be that unifier that you're speaking about? Do you think that he has the characteristics to bring this whole party together?
JP, I hope so, because if he is the leader, I want our party to do well. I've obviously given most of my adult life to this project, so I want it to succeed because I know how important it is. I talk about when things are bad, I go back and I read a text from somebody I love very much who told me that their $400 dental care bill was $30 because of what Jagmeet and the NDP did, and it reminds me that New Democrats are too important to go away. So he'll need to. The thing that bothers me a little bit is even just off the top of the show, when he was talking to you earlier, JP, even taking shots at Tom Mulcair, which I definitely don't always agree with, but as somebody who has led our party previously, probably deserves a little bit of respect from an incoming leader. But I am hopeful that on day one, whoever becomes leader of the party can put all that stuff aside and then focus on how we're bringing everybody in.
Well, and Tom Mulcair in 2015 had one of the best showings for the party ever, right? Certainly did better than the progressive Jagmeet Singh, because Avi Lewis was kind of going after him for being too moderate, essentially, in our interview. What do you make of him taking shots at Mulcair? Maybe I'll get your thoughts on that.
It's true to form of who Avi Lewis seems to be. He is a very divisive person who is really focused, at a time like you're about to win. The votes are pretty well done. They just need to be counted, like a little bit left to be done. Why are you still attacking a former leader who, as you pointed out, was the second best showing? And even if you didn't like Tom Mulcair, if you didn't like his leadership, and he's been very critical of the NDP himself, but he's not engaged in politics like this anymore. But why would you do that? There's still people who work very, very hard under Tom Mulcair, and you insult them all when you do that. So I don't understand what he's doing. I don't understand, we talk about the Western premiers. Look to their official opposition in Ontario and Nova Scotia as well. Nova Scotia, massive defense spending getting ramped up right now, could be very good for the province. And here we have a guy who is anti-military, wants to defund the military. How's the NDP in Nova Scotia going to handle that? They're going to have to answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, the Prime Minister just poured $2 billion, I think, into Nova Scotia this week. In your province, Greg.
Went over really well.
Really
JP.
well, I bet it did.
Really well today.
So talk of
1,100 people in that room. Many standing ovations for Prime Minister Carney today.
Good.
Around that 2% meeting of our NATO commitment that we talked around this table many, many, many times.
Many times. I want to get your thoughts, though, on this idea that Avi Lewis will not commit to running in a by-election. I asked him about that in our interview. There could be an opening, right, in Beaches, East York. We know Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is probably going to jump over to the provincial wing of the Liberal Party soon, maybe take a shot at becoming leader and potentially premier, who knows. But that's a key opening. That's a seat that the NDP has been competitive in the past. Avi Lewis won't commit to going in there and taking on the Prime Minister in the House of Commons if he were to win that by-election. Why do you think he's making that choice?
Well, and as Mel said, and just so that people might have missed it, I believe Tom Mulcair's advice was to get a seat as soon as possible.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about, when that doesn't help you. Jugmeat, it took him a while to get a seat. That was not helpful. Pierre Poilievre, huge hit to his leadership. He had to go to Alberta to run. The provincial Liberals in Ontario, Bonnie Crombie, it pretty much finished her leadership. And I know that the calculation that people are making in the Ontario leadership is, do they have a seat in the legislature? Because you really need to be in the media flow of the day. And if you're not there, this is a big issue. So as much as I'm loath to say it, I don't think it's only Tom Mulcair's advice. I think it's recent history has shown it's going to be better for you if you are actually a legislator, if you're actually in the mix. So it's a very, very odd thing for him to say, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting choice. And as you say, the recent track record of those who kind of shun that idea, it doesn't work out too well for them.